this is Setsumania. I'm coming to you with a brand new deck discussion profile this week. And this week, I am going to be talking about Dracos. Now, Dracos debuted with Luster Pendulum coming out a couple of sets ago. And unfortunately, this past week, Draco was limited to one, which actually hurt a lot of Pendulum decks, not just Pepe, not just Magicians. However, before I get into it, I want to apologize to you guys. As I promised earlier this past week, I was going to put out a new deck profile / discussion on Thursday. Unfortunately, I've been having technical difficulties with my computer since then, so I apologize for that. But it's here now, and that's what matters. So, moving on, this deck profile is not necessarily final. It's definitely a work in progress. This is just at the moment what I am at. And if you have any suggestions or comments that you would like to make about this deck, please comment below. So let's start with monsters. 3 Master Pendulum, the Draco Slayer. 3 Vector Pendulum, the Draco Overlord. 3 Rector Pendulum, the Draco Overlord. He is not out yet. He'll be out in Shining Victories. 1 Luster Pendulum, the Draco Slayer, because that's all we're allowed at the moment. 1 Amorphage Cavum. He is one of the only level 4 Dragon Pendulum monsters in the deck, and there's a reason why that is not a Draco monster, and I'll explain why I am playing him when I get to the spells. And then I'm also running a bit of an engine in here. I'm playing a Magician engine, which is why it's called Magician Draco. 3 Wasnt My Magician, 2 Dragon Pit Magician, 1 Dragon Pulse Magician, and the 1 Performa Paladin Skullcrat Joker that we are allowed in the TCG at the moment. As well as hand traps, I am playing Double Max C and Double Effect Veiler. At the moment, I am liking these as well. Quite honestly, these could also be taken out for, what's it called? The Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. Just, it depends on your preference, but at the moment, I am liking Effect Veiler. For the spells, I'm playing 3 MST rather than Twin Twister. I do not want to discard these guys. That is not good for this deck, so MST is working just fine. 3 Draco Face Off. I am playing a lot of Dracos, so this really helps with the consistency. 3 Pendulum Call. This helps search out Wasnt My Magician, Dragon Pit, and everything else, basically, with the exception of Skullcrat. He's just simply here so I can search out the rest of everything. So, Pendulum Call is definitely very useful. It helps me set up my scales so that I can go into a Draco play of some sort. 3 Wavering Eyes is a Pendulum deck. I would like to deck thin as much as possible, so Wavering Eyes at 3 is perfectly fine. 3 Draco Connection. This is actually a pretty interesting card. You can reveal 1 Dragon-type monster in your hand, add 1 Dragon-type monster with the same level from your deck to your hand, then shuffle the revealed monster into the deck. So that is why I am playing Amorphage Cavum. He's a level 4, scale 5 dragon monster, very similar to Luster Pendulum. The only difference here is that he's not a tuner. He has 0 attack, 20-50 defense, so most of the time I would be using him as fodder for these guys down here. At the moment, I'm just playing around with the extra deck. I don't really know exactly what cards I would want to play other than these guys. This can probably go down to 1, but I'll get to that when I get to the extra deck. Double True Draco Awakening. At the moment, 2 is okay. This might go down to 1, mainly because it is actually rather difficult to get off than people think it is. You have to be pretty set up to begin with in order to get this off. You need to have a Draco Overlord and a Draco Slayer on your side of the field. You play 6 Draco Overlords, and you main deck 4. I main deck 4 Draco Slayers, and extra deck I have 6 Draco Slayers. So it's not completely difficult, but I feel like 2 is just fine, and it's plenty disruptive anyway. And then if I just so happen to have like a Luster back on the field, after this effect, a Luster and any other Draco monster, I can go into a Blasting Draco Slayer. If not, I can go into a Dinosaur Powerful or a Magister Paladin, depending on the situation. And then finally, I have 1 Raigeki. Raigeki's still pretty good. It's definitely not the best card at the moment. This could possibly go to something else. I'm not quite sure at the moment. But this is what I'm liking. Quite honestly, this might be able to be taken out for a Treacherous Trap Hole, and then I would play Rafflesia over here. But at the moment, that is really what I'm playing. And let's move on to the discussion for this deck profile. Is this deck competitive? As long as Luster Pendulum is at 1, no. That's really what is hurting this deck. Unfortunately, it does need an engine of some sort. This one being obviously the Magician engine. It's not the best engine, obviously. It does have some searchability with Skullcrobat Joker and Pendulum Call. The unfortunate part is it is not entirely consistent. It is probably the most consistent version of this deck that really comes to mind at the moment. Part of that consistency problem is the fact that Draco Slayer there's only four scale 5 Draco monsters, that being Rector and Luster here, which is extremely unfortunate. But mainly because we have a load of threes, and that's why I was balancing them out with Cavum and the Wisdom My Magicians, and then the scale of 8 and scale of 1 here are not bad either. For Skullcrobat Joker, I would never use a scale with this card, just simply because it restricts what I can summon, and that is not good. So at the moment, Skullcrobat Joker is just going to be the Stratos for the deck, so I can get into these guys. And if I can get off Wisdom My Magician's effect, that's fine. If I can Pendulum summon with him as well, that's also okay. It really doesn't matter. It's just more important that he is a scale 5, and that's really truly what is important for this card. This can go into rank 7s if you do play it in a weird way. If for some odd reason you do want to go into a rank 7, you can always go with Skullcrobat Joker into the Pendulum Zone with any other scale, with the exception here being Dragon Pit Magician, obviously, and then you special summon out the Dragon Pits, get out like a Big Eye or like Red Eyes Flare, and then blow it up with like a freaking Wavering Eyes or something. So that's just the general idea of the deck and how that would go. Anyway, so why can't this deck work? Well, it lacks a certain amount of searchability, as Luster Pendulum is at 1, obviously, and that really is hurting every single Pendulum deck out there at the moment. It's really, really, really unfortunate that is the case. Just simply because, just in general, for non-competitive Pendulum decks, they really do need Luster for them, and now they're just virtually unplayable, with the exception of a couple of other ones. The exceptions I am thinking of at the moment are probably Ignites and maybe Dynamis. I have played versions of Dynamis where Draco Slayer, where Luster Pendulum, I have not played with him, and it does work fairly decently. It's definitely not tier 2, but it's okay. And but moving back to this deck, however, we'll take a look at the other cards as well. So Master Pendulum, the Draco Slayer. Quite honestly, you could also throw in a Rescue Rabbit into this mix as well, because you have 6 normal monsters here, as well as these guys down here as well. So you really run 7 level 4 normal monsters. So that works really well. And you can throw in I believe a Daigusto Emerald as well to help you get to them. And for some odd reason I can't search. So technical problems with that. Still no searching. Okay, so if you so wanted to, I believe Daigusto Emerald does do stuff with normal monsters as well, other than the fact that you can like shuffle monsters back into the deck with it. So that could be pretty useful in that regard. I don't know how consistent that would be, just simply because I haven't tested it quite yet. So Master Pendulum, the Draco Slayer, it's an okay card. It does the destruction effect just like Luster Pendulum, but it doesn't do the it doesn't search, which is unfortunate. So you unfortunately need like a replacement for it if you really are desperate for it. So it's definitely not the best. It's the replacement for Luster Pendulum at the moment, just being able to destroy, and then you can put something else in the Pendulum Zone. So yes, moving on, 3-Vector Pendulum. The Pendulum effect for this card really isn't going to be seeing a lot of play anymore, just simply because there aren't any Pendulum decks at the moment. It will most likely see more play when Amorphages, however the heck it's said, is a thing, mainly because I think Amorphages can actually do stuff. They're pretty not bad, mainly because they prevent chaining effects, which can be rather annoying. Specifically Cavum right here, as well as some other stupid things. They just prevent your opponent from playing the game, which obviously is extremely annoying. So that's yeah, like this will probably see some more play when Amorphages are in the TCG. Rector Pendulum, the Draco Overlord, negates the effects of face-up pendulum monsters your opponent controls. Again, this probably won't see as much play as a lot of people would hope. Just simply because while this is a decent card, it's basically like what this guy does, just with monsters rather than them as a spell card. It really won't see a lot more play again until Shining Victories comes out. There's a spider on my laptop. Okay, and then moving on, Wasnt My Magician. You guys know what he does already. He can pop himself if you have a Magician or perform a power card in your other Pendulum zone, and then you can destroy him. And if you do, place one Magician Pendulum monster in your deck in your Pendulum zone, except Wasnt My Magician. So I think that's fairly self-explanatory. And then he can discard himself to change the scale of a Pendulum monster. Oh no, to target one card in your Pendulum zone whose current Pendulum scale is different from its original Pendulum scale, and then it becomes its original, which really it won't see a lot of use. I kind of wish it was the opposite, where it could change it to what you want, but that might be a little bit overpowered. So maybe in some instances, but Wasnt My Magician, yeah, that effect won't be that much of a thing. Dragon Pit Magician, on the other hand, can if you discard a Pendulum monster, you can target one spell or trap card on the field and destroy it. That's actually pretty decent. So, why not? And then Dragon Pulse Magician's effect really isn't that useful because it targets monsters, which you can't do to Monarchs if they have their continuous spell, which I can't think of the name of at the moment. And and then Cosmos, obviously the ships can't be targeted either. And then Skullcrobat Joker has one of the worst pendulum effects in the world. So, in terms of how well these two archetypes mesh together, it's not the worst thing. Obviously, as I said before, it's not the worst thing. I think this might be one of the better versions at the moment, just simply because they do have a lot of searchability. It's not connected searchability, which is really not great. But it's honestly I feel like at the moment it might be the best way to play this deck. There are some other cards you could actually throw in as well if you want to play some Dynamist, so you can protect Dynamist with Dynamist and get some searchability there. I mean, you could play Dynamist Terran, which is like the pterodactyl one. When he destroys a monster by battle, you can add a Dynamist card to your hand, not necessarily another monster, which case would probably be Dynamist Charge, and then you could play like 3 Terran and 2 Charge or something, or the opposite or something. So it's just and then Terran can protect another copy of itself from being destroyed in certain instances. So that could be also a technical version of that deck if you completely wanted to. We could play Throw and Salvage as well to get back Terrans if you use it for a rank 4 play. It's also a scale 3, so that definitely helps as well. Unfortunately, it's not the best thing, obviously, because you have an overload of scale 3s here and not as many scale 5s as would be preferable. So that is really unfortunate with that. Draco Connection is probably my favorite card in the deck, other than the Draco Face-Off, which makes the deck stupidly consistent. In whenever if you draw into a Draco Face-Off and a Draco Connection, you're gonna do pretty decently. Well, just simply because if you open these two in any of the Draco Lords, you get a pretty decent opening hand. You get to add a Draco monster to your extra deck. Then you get to either activate one or special summon one. If you have a Draco Connection in your hand and you have another Draco in your monster in your hand as well, you can shovel that back in your hand, search out a different one. And there's just stupid things you can do with this deck as well. And Draco Connection just gets you to the pendulum scales that you need as soon as possible, especially if you have multiples of the same scales, which is very often, which is extremely annoying. So that's why I'm playing 3 of it in this deck. So thank you guys for watching this deck profile. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you have any more opinions or any suggestions for this deck, please comment below. And as always, guys, have a nice day.